Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter from Berkshire Paint and Sip, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. Alright, so today we're going to be painting Dahlia Dancer, and I'm going to be sipping on some coffee. And if you enjoy this process, I do hope that you like and subscribe to my channel, and that you also check out my Patreon page where you're going to find additional painting perks. So let's get painting and let's get sipping. Alright, so for my materials today, I'm going to be using a stretched and primed 16 by 20 inch canvas. If you're painting along with me, you can certainly switch up the size, but that's what I'll be using. For my tools today, I have acrylic paint. My colors are titanium white, burnt umber, which I'll call brown, Mars black, magenta, and deep yellow. And of course you can switch up those colors too if you like, but that's what I'll be using. For my tools today, I'm going to be using a piece of white chalk for some drawing. And for my brushes, I have 3 brushes. I have a 1/2 inch wide flat bristle brush. I have a number 6 round synthetic brush, and I have a number 2 round synthetic brush, and I will refer to these as small, medium, and large as we go through the painting process. And of course you can switch those up as well if you'd like to, but that's what I'll be using. If you're painting along with me, you'll probably want to have a cup of water for washing your brushes as well as a paper towel for drying your brushes. And down below this video, I will be providing you with a couple of additional resources that can help you through your painting process. One of them is a link where you can purchase the same exact paint kit that I'm using, from the large canvas to the paints. I even throw in the paper towel for you, so it's all there for you. So that's down there. There's also a link where you can download a free image of the final painting. So you can print that and use it as a visual resource as you're going through the painting process. And there's also written step-by-step instructions down there for you as well. And that's all we're going to need today. Alright, so what we're going to do for the first step is we're going to paint our background. So I'm going to be using my large brush. The colors I'm using are white, brown, and black. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pre-mix myself a gray color for the background. So I've already pre-mixed mine so you can see where I'm headed, but I'm going to show you how I got there. So I'm not going to use all of my white because I need some of my white for my spotlight and for the petals on my dress. So I'm going to just kind of separate some of that white paint out so I don't accidentally use it. And then what I'm going to do with my white is I'm going to add a little bit of brown to it and a touch of black. So this way, and I just add a little bit at a time because they will turn it really dark really quickly on you, and black or gray paint will get a little bit darker as it dries. So this is kind of where I'm headed, maybe a touch more black into it, and just a little tiny touch on my brush is how I'm gonna just continue to add that black. And then once you get it in the shade that you want, I think I'm gonna go just a little bit darker here. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. So once you get it in the shade that you want, we're really just going to paint in the entire background. So this looks pretty similar to this color over here. So I'm just going to kind of combine the two for my painting purposes. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to color the entire canvas. I don't need to do anything fancy here. I'm going to be going left to right so I can get a nice even kind of coverage over the whole thing. And I use these long, broad strokes going across, which is going to, again, provide me with a nice kind of uniform look across the whole thing. We will be adding a spotlight onto the background in a minute, and we'll also add a shadow as to where the wall meets the floor. But right now I'm just kind of getting this entire background on here. And if you didn't mix enough paint, you can always mix some on the fly. And if it's not exactly the same color gray, that's totally okay, because a wall can certainly have a gradient from light to dark from one side to the next. So don't worry if it's not exactly perfect. And then if you wanted to do a second coat on it, you certainly could, but we will be, like I said, doing the spotlight of sorts as well as a shadow down at the bottom. So we will be adding additional paint to it on the next step. So if it's not perfect at this point, no worries. You can always kind of touch it up as we do the next step. And then we will be using the same brush for the next step. So once you've got this base coat on your canvas, you can just wash and dry this large brush and make sure you got all your little spots and then just get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're gonna do for the next step is we're gonna be painting a spotlight on our wall or in our room, as well as a shadow where the wall meets the floor. But I do want to forewarn you that before you start this step that you make sure your canvas is dry. So, you know, you can either take that extra long break if you'd like to, or you can find some kind of fun fanning method to get it dry, or you could just do as I did and whip out a blow dryer and get it dry that way. But whatever method you choose to do is totally fine. Just want to make sure that it's dry. I'm going to be using my large brush. The colors that I'm using are black, white, and my wall color or my background color, the gray. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to start with a little bit of black on my large brush, and I'm going to make myself a marker about a quarter way up on my left-hand side. So to know how far that is, you can visually kind of pick where your halfway point is and then go about halfway between that and the bottom of your canvas and just make yourself a little bit of a mark. Then you can use your brush as a measuring tool or anything else that you would like. Mark it with your finger and then come on over to the other side and make yourself a mark at about the same height. Then what I'm going to do is I've got black on my brush. I'm just going to give myself a kind of a light line going from one to the other. It doesn't even have to be perfect. And then I'm going to pick up, without washing my brush, I just picked up some of my wall gray. And this is going to give me, I need a little bit more black so we can get it nice and dark down at the bottom. This is going to give me a kind of an out of focus area at the bottom part of the wall leading into the floor. So I'm going to just kind of keep rubbing this back and forth. And when I wanted to blend into the wall or into the floor, instead of picking up more black, what I'm going to do is I'm picking up more of my wall color, and that's going to allow me to blend it in on the top side and on the bottom side of it. So I just picked up some of my wall color and I'm just going back and forth left to right until I feel like it's nice and blended, and then I go ahead and do that on the bottom side of it. And if you feel like you're not able to get a good blend or the black isn't coming off of your brush enough for you to be comfortable, you can always wash and dry your brush like I just did. Pick up more of your wall color or the background color and start on the outside of that darkness that you just did, and just kind of back this into it just a little bit, and that'll get it to blend nice for you. So whichever method is easiest for you. And then after you get that done, you can just wash and dry that large brush, and we're going to put ourselves on a spotlight of sorts on the wall on the top. So I'm just washing and drying my brush, and I'm going to start with white paint on my brush. So I've got my large brush, I've got white paint. I want this to come from the top left-hand corner and kind of be spotlighting my dancer that's in through here. So it's going to be a little bit more narrow up and through here and kind of get a little bit wider as it goes towards here. And I'm making mine kind of like a smoky spotlight. It doesn't have to be totally clean looking. I just want it to have kind of a sense of airiness to it. So I've got the white paint on my brush, and what I'm going to start to do is just kind of start to rub it in like this, kind of get it to go more narrow up at the top. I want it to blend in with my wall. So once I've got this kind of started, I'm going to pick up some of my wall color and start to get that color to blend in with the surrounding area. So it doesn't have to be a perfect blend. Mine's going to be, like I said, like kind of a smoky kind of look to it. So as I'm blending this, what I'm doing is I'm letting off the pressure on my brush just to get these colors to really work nicely together. And you can always do this in a couple of different layers. You'll find as you're doing it that you might want more lightness, or you might want more of your wall color. It will look a little bit lighter when it's wet. So just know that as you're going through this process sometimes you just have to give it a minute to dry so you can fully see how it's gonna look in the long run. So just make sure that as you're doing this, you don't kind of cast judgment until it's fully dry, because again, when it fully dries, it will be a little bit darker. And you just want to make sure that it kind of casually blends into the surrounding area. So I know that for me, on some of my surrounding area, it looks like it needs a second coat. So I'm just going to make sure that everything is nice and painted. I'm doing this all in kind of a circular, kind of like a scrubbing type of brush stroke, but you could certainly do whatever brush stroke is comfortable for you, as long as you get the entire area colored in and that you've got, if you can, a nice lighter spot going towards your dancer. And then we are going to be using our chalk for the next step. So once you've got your spotlight on your wall and the shadow down below, you can put your large brush away, take out your piece of chalk, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're gonna do for the next step is we're drawing an outline of our flower dress. So I'm gonna be using my chalk, and I'm gonna give you a couple of markers, and we're gonna connect those markers, and then we're gonna draw some outlines of some petals, and by the time we're done, we'll have this beautiful outline of a dahlia skirt or dress. It's gotta be a full dress, right? It's not just the skirt. I guess it's the skirt dress portion. So I'm gonna use my chalk. I'm gonna give you a couple of markers. We're first gonna draw a big, huge oval. So what I'm gonna do is at the top of my canvas, I'm gonna find about the halfway point, and then I'm coming down about, I would say around 4 inches. If the canvas is 16 inches, that would mean that that's about a quarter of the way down. And then I'm gonna come straight down from that, and from the bottom of my canvas at that halfway point, I'm coming up about 2.5 inches. So this is about halfway between, I would say, the edge of your wall to the bottom of the canvas. So about halfway up there. And then I'm gonna make 2 more dots on the sides. So you're gonna come about halfway up or down the left side of your canvas. And I'm gonna come in, I would say about 1/3 or 5.5 to 6 inches, somewhere in through here. So that would be where I'm bringing that one. And then on the right hand side, I'm gonna come up or down about halfway. And I'm coming in maybe about 3.5 inches and making myself a marker in through there. I'm gonna connect these in a big, huge oval, but I want my oval to look a little tipped. So I'm gonna have, this is going to be kind of my highest point in through here. I'm going to get these two to connect something like this. And then when I go to get these two to connect, I'll go something like this. And then as I'm doing this one, it's going to kind of come more in a downward fashion as opposed to up. So it's going to be a little bit down in this direction. And then it's going to come all the way around here and kind of come over. And it can even come a little bit lower than this as you're coming down into this vicinity. And then once we've got our oval shape on there, what I'm going to do is draw the exterior kind of edges of the petals. We're going to actually erase some of this outline, but this just gives you that exterior shape of it. So these petals on these flowers are smaller at the top and they get larger at the bottom. So what I'm going to do, we're going to have our petals kind of draping over the sides. So at the top portion, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and I'm going to bring in a couple of these petals. So it's going to be almost like a point. I'm going to create this opening of sorts. And if I was to erase this line here, let me get my wet brush, which can act as an eraser so you can kind of see what I'm doing here. So I've in essence kind of taken this and made it into a little bit of a point coming off of there. I've got some long ones, so this one I'm going to come from here. This one's going to come way down, almost to where I had put that marker, and then I'm just going to kind of bring it back up like this. And then I'm just going to kind of keep coming down this side in this fashion, you can use your brush again as an eraser, just so you can kind of see what you're doing. And I'm just kind of erasing this so you can see how I'm getting these exterior shapes of these petals. As I come down into this vicinity, down in through here, I'm not necessarily going to make them all the same length, and maybe some of them kind of separate and are a little bit higher of sorts. I've got to kind of change direction so they look like gravity is taking over. So I've got this one in through here, I've got this one down in through here, maybe I've got a little short one that's going to represent in the back. Maybe I've got another little short one. Maybe this one's where it starts to kind of flip out in this direction. And of course, yours don't have to be exactly as mine. You can certainly make yours of your own kind of variety. Let's see, I think I'm going to now start working my way down here because I feel like my hand wants to make them go in a wrong direction. So I'm going to start up at the top up here. So up at the top, they're going to be little tiny ones. So I'm just going to kind of make myself these little kind of points coming in this direction. Of course, those don't have to be perfect either. We're going to be painting over them. But as soon as it gets right to here, this is where I'm going to start again to kind of droop this down. So if this is this one in through here, maybe I droop this back inwards, and that's going to give us some nice movement onto that one. And then maybe I've got one coming way down into here, and this one maybe comes back up. And of course, you could go outside of your outline if you wanted to. If you wanted to have some extra long ones, you could certainly feel free to make some extra long ones. And then once you have that exterior, I'm going to, just for visual purposes, so I know as the artist what I'm doing here, I'm going to erase those little lines that I don't want that are in between the petals. So I just have water on my brush right now, and I want to make sure that I have a complete visual as to what I'm doing with this, with the outline of this flower. So by erasing the lines that I don't want, I can continue to see the full picture. But if I still had that exterior line on there, I might tend to get a little confused. So I want there to look like there's an inside to the skirt where her leg is going to kind of come out. So I'm going to have almost tiers of petals, and I'm going to have kind of an open spot in through here. So I'm going to start up at the top. This is going to be a whole bunch of tiny little petals, so I'm not really going to outline those right now. But what I do want to do is kind of give myself an area where that top section is going to go. So I'm just kind of taking this and giving myself a couple of little points that are coming off in this direction. You can see how they're making their way to this one over here. And then what I can do is I can go ahead and make like my second tier of my petals going in through here. And of course, yours don't have to be exactly as mine. They can certainly be different than mine, but because there's no two flowers that have exactly the same number of petals, so feel free to make yours different than mine. But I am going to have, again, kind of a little open area in through here, so I'm just kind of maneuvering my little petals to make sure that I have some kind of open area, and these petals are just kind of dripping off the sides in through here. And of course, when we start to paint it in, yours may morph a little bit. And then I'm just going to go ahead and make myself one more tier of these petals, and you can see I'm kind of going in between the one that's behind it. And you can bring them far down. They don't have to be really systematic. You can have them with curves on them. You can have one a little bit longer than the other. You could even have, you know, a third one in there somewhere, wherever you want there to be. And I'm leaving this space in through here, so I'm not going to put one in through there. And then maybe I'll have one in through here. And of course, you can certainly, I think I want it right here, you can certainly modify yours as much as you want to. And that's all I'm going to do for this part. We are going to be using our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got all of your petals outlined here, you can do any adjusting that you want. Put your chalk away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're doing the first layer of our petals on our flower dress, our dahlia flower dress. It's a beautiful flower. It has these, and it can come in different colors too. So if you want to do yours a different color, feel free to do so. But they just have these big, almost like systematic petals all the way around. They're just really beautiful. So for those of you who like order in your paintings, this is definitely the flower for you to paint because all of the petals are really nice and organized. So what I'm going to do is I am going to be making my petals dark at the bottom, and I'm going to progressively get them lighter and lighter and lighter as they go up the dress. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to make a really dark version of the magenta. So I can take some of my magenta and I can add brown and a touch of black to it. So you can really make yours as dark as you want. We'll be progressively getting it lighter and lighter as you go up the dress, but this first go around, this first layer can be pretty darn dark because it's going to be in the shadows. It's going to be the petals that are underneath that dress, at least in this area and through here. And then they start to emerge out from under the dress. So it's mine is almost like a nice dark purpley kind of color. So once you've got it into the desired color that you want, I'm really just going to kind of start painting this bottom layer. So I've got this area in through here that I'm just going to kind of scoot that dark color up into. You don't necessarily, especially on these petals that are underneath, you don't necessarily need to have every single petal distinctly its own at this point. We're really just kind of going for the base coat of it. So if yours are lighter or darker, or you don't have definition in between or from one petal to the next, no worries. And because we were working with chalk, that chalk is going to kind of come and make its way into your paint as you're going through this process. So it will bleed into your paint, which is totally fine. We are going to be doing a second layer, so no worries on that. I'm just kind of bringing this all the way to the edge of my chalk, and if I can still see some of my chalk as I'm going through this process, that's okay, because that's going to help me to see the edges of my petals as well. So don't feel like you have to cover up all of your chalk at this point. That again will help you to, especially as we get up into the higher petals, that's going to help you to determine one from the next. So now that I've got that in place, what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to start, without washing my brush, I'm going to start picking up some of my magenta color. And what this is going to do, because I still have the dark color on there, it's going to help to progressively get this color to be lighter and lighter. And I don't want it to go totally, you know, vibrant on me at this point. So I am going to, in a minute, start to utilize a little bit of white and, believe it or not, brown on my brush. So what's going to happen as I'm coming up the petals and towards the tippy top of them, this is going to give me a nice neutral light base coat for these petals. So it's not going to be too vibrant pink, so, or magenta. So now that I've kind of completed that that first kind of layer of those petals, I'm going to pick up my magenta plus a tiny bit of white and a little bit of brown. And what'll happen is I can steer this into a lighter version as I'm coming up the dress. So you can see right now it's getting a little bit lighter on this row of petals, and then on the next row I will add even more white and a little bit of brown to it. So by the time I am up at the top, I'm going to have it pretty darn light, if not even a light brown it might appear to be as I get up towards that tippy top layer. So just know that if yours gets pretty darn light, it is okay. So again, right now, I'm not washing my brush. I'm just picking up a little bit of white and a touch of brown. And then again, you'll see these petals start to get lighter and lighter as I come up that flower. And again, yours can be in any kind of shade you want. If you want yours super duper light, you can really use more white, but having this kind of neutral base or this progressively lighter base as we're getting towards the top, that's going to provide a really nice natural look to it as when we start to add those details on top of it, the highlights and the shadows and all that good stuff. And again, I'm still just kind of working with adding a little bit of white and brown to my brush as I'm working my way up here. And because I didn't wash my brush, I still have some of that magenta on there, and I can kind of push my brush every now and again to almost unload the rest of the magenta that is on my brush, and you can see that they're getting lighter and lighter. And right now I'm just going to pick up white with a touch of brown as I'm getting up into these up into this top area and through here, and just kind of, this top area is not going to have as much color on it when it's all said and done. So if yours ends up being a little bit, again, on the grayer or the browner side as we're coming in through this area, that's okay, because that's what's going to happen to these petals as we start developing the highlights and the shadows. And if I have some of this gray kind of peeking through during this step, I'm okay with that, because that's going to add more dimension to my flower. And I'm just kind of flicking my brush. These are the smaller little petals as they're coming up towards the top of the dress. And I know that I'm going to have her shoulder, and I'm going to have a little spot where her arm comes through here. So I'm kind of leaving these couple of little peekaboo spots. If you want to have her arm kind of appear in that area, you can certainly leave a couple of those little peekaboo spots as well. But if you don't get yours to show as much as mine, don't worry about it. But you definitely want a couple of little darker spots in through there, just so when we do those smaller petals, you'll be able to see some definition in them. So you don't want to go all the way white right now, is kind of the moral to my story at this point. And then we're going to be using our, let's see, what are we going to use for the next brush? Oh, we're going to use our large brush for the next step. So once you've got this first layer of your petal color on here, you can put this medium brush away, take out your large brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're putting the shadow on the floor underneath our dancer. So I'm going to be using my large brush. I'm going to be using brown and black paint. If I need to, I can pick up a little bit of water, or I can pick up some of my gray color to make sure that I get it nice and blended in. So my trick here is I'm not going to use a ton of paint, and I'm going to be almost kind of scrubbing it in as I'm going through the process, so I can have soft edges to it. I don't want this to be a solid outline. I want it to almost feel like there's multiple lights on her and the shadows just kind of dissipating underneath her. So the shadow, or the biggest light, is coming from here. So I'll have some good shadow on the right hand side, but I'm also imagining that she's on stage somewhere. So maybe there's multiple light sources. So I'm going to have a nice shadow underneath her. It will be back behind the dress a little bit. So I'm going to have it traveling up behind the dress. So I will end up painting over a couple of the tips of these petals, but we got more work to do on them anyway. So don't worry if you paint over them a little bit. So here I go. So I'm going to take just a teeny bit of brown paint and just a teeny bit of black paint. So not a lot, so little that if you want to, you can even just kind of tap it on your paper towel. I'd rather have to add more than to freak out and need to, you know, take some off of my canvas. But if something goes wrong, I always have that background color that can help save me. So once I've got it on my brush, I'm going to decide where I want this to go. I'm going to have it up here a little bit, and it's going to come over to the left and over to the right. So I'm just going to kind of start rubbing away in through here. I feel like I need more paint at this point. I was very cautious. I'd rather be cautious than to have too much. So I just added a touch more. And you can add a little bit of water onto your brush too if you want to. So I'm just going to kind of bring this out in through here, making sure that I've got it as far down as I want. Kind of want it to come out here a little bit. And if you want it to be more dramatic or have more dimension in any area, especially right underneath her, you can add a little bit more black to that particular area. So a shadow is just intended to be whatever surface it's on, only darker. So you can certainly manipulate this to be in whatever intensity that you want. And usually the shadow is going to be a little bit darker when it's closest to the object that is casting the shadow. So as you get towards the edges, if you want to or need to, you can pick up some of that original floor color, and that will help you to get it to blend in a little bit. But I'm using a very firm brush, so my brush allows me to kind of scrub it on there. But if I wanted to, I could just pick up a little bit of that original gray, and I can get it to just kind of blend in along those edges if I needed it to. I don't need this to be a perfectly, the edges of my shadow don't have to be perfect. I want them to look kind of dissipated because of the edges of the dress have different, you know, ways about them. It's not a perfect circle, so you can certainly have fun with this. And then just keep tweaking it as much as you want to. We're going to be using our small brush for the next step. So once you've got your shadow on here, you can put your large brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're painting the first layer of our lady's body. I'm going to be using my small brush, and I'm going to be using just brown paint. So this is going to provide us with a really great base to paint some skin on top, paint some shoes, paint some hair, and all that good stuff. So I'm going to just give you some basic markers, and we'll connect some dots, and we'll have a shape of a dancing lady by the time we're done. So I've got my small brush. I'm going to pick up some brown paint. I am going to be doing the legs first. So my lady is kind of leaning back, and her body is kind of at an angle. So I'm going to have her leg kind of coming out of this area in through here. And then her main leg is going to come down like this. And then we're going to have another little piece of her leg out the back side of it, kicking out the back side. So I've got some pre-markers here that I'm going to tell you where I have them, and you can kind of place yours in similar places. So this one that I have in through here, if this is about halfway left to right on the center of my canvas, I'm a little bit above my floor line, and I'm over by maybe about an inch, inch and a half. And of course I've got it nestled in to the area that I know is going to be the underneath of the skirt. I've got myself a horizontal line. This is going to be the bend in her leg. So this is like right around her knee. And then what I'm going to do from the right side is I'm going to make myself a diagonal line going up to whatever that petal is. And then same thing on the left-hand side. I'm going to do a diagonal line that is a similar kind of line going up to wherever that nearest petal is in the upward direction. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the bottom part of this leg. So the bottom part is going to come right about here. Think of this as like the tippy toe. So if you go over to the right from here, maybe about a half of an inch to an inch, and come straight down about halfway into your floor, that's where it's going to come to. So I'm going to make myself a diagonal line from about the center of here all the way down to that mark that we just made. So something like this. And again, it's just a diagonal line. And then I want to give it a little bit of shape. So I know that this is the back side of the knee in through here. I'm going to give her a little bit of a calf muscle that's going to come. It's in essence kind of just a really long arced kind of line that will come all the way down, because this is the toe. This will be the back of the foot. So I'm going to say it's going to come right about here. So this is going to come to about in through there. I'm going to color that in with my brown paint. And then I need to do the front side that is going to come in essence kind of a gradual line to meet the front of what's going to be the toe. So you don't want it to bulk out towards me this way. You just want it to kind of stay nice and slender with that interior line that we did. So I'm just going to kind of round her knee just a little bit. And again, don't worry if this isn't perfect at this point, because we got lots to go on making her leg look nice and realistic. But this really just kind of gives you, like I said, that base color to get it started. Her foot might bump out just a little bit because of those high heels that she's wearing. So if you bump it out just a little bit, that's totally fine. And then she's got maybe the back side of her foot, something like this. Again, we're going to put a shoe on in a little bit, but this is just giving you the foot to start that process. And then I'm going to have her other leg kind of coming out the other side. Let me just finish painting this brown in here. And if you can see anything underneath right now, don't worry about it, because again, we've got lots more to do. And then her other toe is going to come somewhere about here. So I've got this up a little bit from the ankle and over to the right, maybe about an inch, inch and a half. That's where her, or the bottom part of her foot is going to go. I've got her calf is going to come out similar to where this one comes out. So I'm going to just kind of give myself a little bit of a diagonal line just to start this. Give myself a diagonal line in through here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to give the little bit of a calf muscle in through here. And again, I know that it's kind of a little difficult to see right now because I'm brown on top of a dark color, but I don't want to, I want to have a nice dark base. I know it's going to get darker as it dries, so I'm not terribly concerned about not being, I know I can see mine. I'm sure you can see yours at home too. And then maybe I'll give a little tiny bit of a kick out at the toe, something like this. And again, I need a little bit of a heel, so I'm going to put a little heel in through here. This one's going to be a little bit more contorted than the other one, but that's okay. We'll figure it out when we go to put that shoe on. So that works for me on this. Then I'm going to move up top to give her her head and an arm. So if this is going to be her body in through here, and of course you're going to be able to hide a knee or hide a thigh with petals as we go through the process. I might even make these petals a little bit bigger to hide the top part of the leg, but that gets us started. Her body is going to be, if this was her knee, her rear end would be somewhere in through here, so her torso would be somewhere in through here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a couple of markers so we can do her shoulder, an elbow, and the top of her head, and then we'll connect those dots. So for me, if this is going to be where her body kind of comes out in through here, I'm going to put her left shoulder is going to go right about here. So if you come straight up from your knee, up, 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 I'm just a little bit to the right of my knee. So I've got that shoulder is going to be right about in through there. Then I want to give her elbow on the other side. So I can actually just do a very slight diagonal line. That's going to be about 3.5 to 4 inches wide. And to give you a good gauge, I'm almost, let's say if this is the outside of my skirt in through here, I'm just a little bit to the left of that, and I'm a little bit lower than this one. So I'm right about here is where the tip of the elbow is going to go. I'm just going to connect these two with a slightly diagonal line so we can build our self shape on top of that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go almost about halfway across these two. So if this is my halfway, I'm going to go just to the right of that and straight up about 2 inches. This is going to be the tippy top of her head, and where we're going to draw another diagonal line. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to draw a diagonal line to this one in through here. So this is going to become part of her arm and her head. Then I'm going to take this corner here and I'm going to give myself another diagonal line, but it's going to be a very narrow one. So I'm going to just kind of bring it over like this about halfway through this line, and then I'm going to curve it down. So this is going to give me the side of her body. something like this, or about a third of the way, a third to halfway. You can decide how drastic that is. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to give her a head. So her head is going to be hidden with a lot of hair and stuff, so you don't need to make it very perfect. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to come about halfway down this line in through here, and then just kind of curve this just a little bit, something like that. And then at the top, I'm going to give it more of a rounded kind of look to it in through here. And then this is going to come about, I would say, maybe about a third of the way over here. And again, this is all going to be covered with hair and stuff, so don't worry if that's not perfect. I'm going to round her shoulder a little bit in through here so it doesn't look like a straight line. And then I need to give her a little bit of movement on, or a little bit of shape on this arm in through here. So I'm going to give her a little bit of a bicep in through here, give her a little bit of a forearm coming in through here. So this is going to just kind of widen a little bit as it gets to that elbow. So something like this and something like this. And of course, you can reshape yours all you want. And then I'm just going to color these two parts in with my brown paint. And again, it doesn't have to be anything perfect. You can certainly modify the shape all that you want. When you get to where it's meeting your petals and stuff, what I'm doing is I'm just going to pull that brown inside or in between some of those petals in kind of a chaotic way. So it just looks like by the time we're done those petals, you'll be able to see little peekaboo spots of her skin around the top portion of her dress. And then I'm going to again have her arm kind of coming out in through here. So you don't want her arm to be too long. So I think I'm going to have a little peekaboo spot of her arm coming in through here, like she's holding her the skirt up in this direction. I'm going to just kind of bring this out like this. Maybe this is going to be her hand portion. Maybe she's got a little finger up in through here, and then her little thumb like that. And then we are going to be using our small brush for the next step. So once you've got this first layer of her body done, you can wash and dry this small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're doing petal shadows. So this is going to be all the little shadows that are underneath the dress and in between the little petals as they go up towards the top. So just like when you're doing the actual petals, how we progressively got lighter as we went up, the shadows are going to do the same thing. So they're going to be really dark, probably black, right underneath that skirt. And then as they kind of work their way up towards the top petals, they'll get lighter and lighter. So I'm going to be using black, brown, magenta, yellow, and white. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first start with black underneath here. And of course you can certainly, modify anything that you want. If you want to manipulate your petals a little bit as we go through the process, feel free to do so. But I'm starting with just black paint on my brush right now. And whenever I go to add a shadow like this, what I really want it to also do is blend into the color next to it. So I still have some of that dark magenta that we used in the earlier stages when we created this first layer. So I add that little black up into the crevice, and then I bring some of the original magenta color to blend it on in. So you can really have yours as dramatic as you want, but I definitely, especially in this back area, want it to look really dark underneath the skirt, so that way it gives that illusion of it being really tucked underneath, and that we're not feeling like these petals are on our side of the girl. It just continues to feel like it is on the underside. And of course, I'm going to go ahead and make these little tiny ones up in through here, right along her knee. And of course, we're going to be modifying and making her knee look oh so beautiful when we get to that skin color. But right now, I'm just kind of getting my shadows on and making sure that that it all makes sense, that I've got this nice dark layer underneath. And then as I go up the petals, this is utilizing this shadow is going to allow my petals to separate too as I get up into the ones up above. And it could be the darkest here, and then as you're working your way towards this left-hand side, maybe you stop picking up black and you just let that black run out or run off of your brush, let it work its way off of your brush, and that way these shadows over on this left-hand side they'll still be there, but they won't be as dramatic as they are over on that right-hand side. And then I just want to make sure that they blend in nicely, so just picking up some of that original dark magenta. And as I work my way up in through here, this is where I can utilize maybe my dark magenta plus brown as a shadow color on this second layer. So you just want every layer that you do, or every tier of these flowers, you want that shadow to take on a little bit lighter version of the layer below it. So that way it gives you that sense of dimensional element. And you can also make it go up in between those petals as well. So again, I'm making sure that I have that little shadow in between, and then that it blends into the main area of that particular petal. So you can certainly, the light is over on the left-hand side, it would definitely have a little bit, theoretically a little bit less on that left-hand side, but we've got lots of highlights that we're going to be doing in a little while that will accentuate all of the highlight areas. So I'm just kind of bringing this shadow up into here, making sure that it looks a little bit darker than the tip of that petal. If I needed to, picking up a little bit of brown as I go through these ones, just to make sure that I've got a good shadow. So it's really, in my head, I'm just thinking, what's that under color going to be? It's going to be a little bit darker than the tip of it. So I can utilize whatever color I used in that tip and then just add a little bit of a darker element. So either brown or black, or as I get up in the higher tiers, I can utilize the magenta with a little bit of brown as I go into those lighter ones. So you can certainly tweak it as much as you want. I'm just attempting to get it pretty dark in these little crevices, because that's what's going to give it that real good dimensional element. And of course, when we go to do our highlights, that will make the shadow stand out even more. So as I'm coming up into this upper region, I am going to utilize a little bit of yellow as well, because that's going to give it more of like an orangey type of tone as it's going into this upper region underneath some of these petals. So you can utilize a little bit of magenta plus yellow plus brown, but it just gives it a different tone. I'm not really pre-mixing a huge amount of paint or even a solid color. I just want to give it some kind of different tone, maybe a little bit more warmth as it's coming up into these upper ones. So you don't necessarily have to use the yellow if you don't want to. That's going to be a personal preference, but to me it just adds that extra bit of another color in there that speaks to these type of flowers, because they definitely take on different shades of their petals as they go up the flower. The flower can be, again, lighter up at the top, but I saw some that had a lot of yellow in them. I saw some that had even these little like purple dots around the tips up top. So there's definitely different varieties. As I'm coming into these ones in through here, I'm going to have some of them laying on top of the petals underneath. So that's where you can see I'm kind of getting that shadow to go underneath and in between, and that is going to get those petals to pop out in front of the one that they're sitting behind. So that's again where you're gonna kind of recharge it and get it to be a little bit more dimensional, but again, you still want it to blend in with the petal that it's sitting on. So I just had to kind of reload my brush with some of that base color to make sure that it didn't just look like a line underneath the other one. I want to make sure that it blends in with it. And again, the highlights that we'll be doing later will help to sell the story of it being even more dimensional. And as I'm getting up towards these upper ones, I'm going to be using that pink and brown and yellow mixture with a little bit of white to just make sure that I've got some good shadows underneath these ones. And as you get towards these smaller ones, you may find that you don't need to do as much detail or concentrate too much on every single petal, but you can see just by kind of flicking that brush underneath what I'm deeming as some of these petals, it helps to give that definition to it. So I'm going to have some petals kind of going up in this direction, and when it gets into this area, they kind of get a little chaotic because some are going up, some are coming down. I'm just trying to let my intuition kick in and let them go in the direction that I feel that they would be coming out of this particular flower at. So once we've got the shadows within our petals, we are going to be utilizing this small brush for the next step. So you can just wash it and dry it and get ready. All right, so what we're gonna do for the next step is we're finishing our legs. So I'm gonna use my small brush. I'm using black, white, yellow, magenta, and brown. I'm using all my colors. So how I'm gonna do this is I'm going to pre-mix myself a peachy kind of skin color, which will work as the main skin tone that I'm gonna be using on the legs. And then I'll add little highlights and shadows with the brown and with white. I'm gonna have her with black, shiny, high heel shoes, so that's gonna be a nice, simple color. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna show you how I made my color. It's actually way brighter on my palette than it's gonna look on her skin because we have a really dark brown base tone that we're working on. So all I did for this was I mixed some of my deep yellow and some of my magenta, and it turns out this really nice, rich, peachy tone that ends up being a great accent onto this top brown. And of course you can tweak yours as much as you want to, but I'm going to use this as the main color, and then as I build my form, I'll add a little bit of white and brown and stuff like that. So I'm going to do the outside leg first, and this is one of those steps, less is more. You never need a lot of paint. I'm going to work on the center part of the leg, so, and just kind of work my way out towards those edges. And this, of course, is just, I'm just moving my brush a little bit. It's giving me a really nice natural tone on top of that brown. And I'm going to do it down the entire leg. And we'll add, like I said, the highlights and the shadows on in a minute. But this is going to give us the nice suntan kind of look for the skin. And then as we build our layers, that'll make it look much more realistic. So for me, whenever I think about skin, I think that the skin has, you know, hundreds of layers. So I like to build my skin in layers because it looks more natural to me when I do it that way. And I'm just bringing this all the way down her foot, something like that. And then when I go to add the layer of skin on the other one, I'm actually going to leave a tiny dark line in between the two legs, so that way I know where one is going to meet the other. And again, this is just a kind of a slow building process. You don't need a lot of paint on your brush, but this is definitely going to give you a nice natural look as we're building these colors, or as we're building the skin. And while that is kind of cooking or drying, I should say, I'm going to put her shoes on. So I'm just going to wipe my brush off on my paper towel. I'm picking up a tiny bit of black paint, and so I want her to not look like she's falling over, so I definitely want her to have some balance to it. So I'm going to put the main, where her toe is, I'm going to give her a little bit of the front part of her shoe just kind of coming out like this. That's going to ground it to the floor. And then I've got the side part of her shoe coming like this. And then I've got the back part that's got to come up her ankle or her heel just a little bit. And of course you can make yours whatever way you want to. I'm going to just bring this pointy part of the heel down in this direction, and then I've just got to kind of get them to connect like they make sense. So something like this. And of course yours might end up looking a little bit different than mine, which is totally fine. You just want it to kind of make sense that she's not going to fall over in her pretty heels, and if it was to straighten out, it would, you know, she'd be able to stand up, I guess. And then I'm going to make a similar one on the other foot, but it's up a little bit higher. So I'm going to try and give it a similar shape. So I've got my toe in through here, something like that, and then I've got to get it to go up her foot. And of course the other foot we're seeing at a different angle, so it might not look as big because it's at a different angle, but you can certainly, again, you know, modify yours whatever way you need to. And then of course the heel needs to come down almost to where the toe part is, just so you have, when it was on the ground, she'd be able to stand. So something like that. That looks pretty good to me. Maybe a little more length on this heel in through here. There we go. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to wash and dry my little brush, add a tiny bit of white paint just to give myself a little bit of sparkle on here, a little highlight. So I'm just doing like a little white dash in through there, maybe a little highlight on the tip, little highlight on the tip, a little highlight down the side. That's all I'm going to do for her shoes. So now I'm going to add the highlight on her legs. So they're just peeking out of the skirt, so I'm going to have kind of a highlight on her thigh, maybe a little on her knee, and on her calf muscle coming in through there. So I'm going to use my peach with a touch of white paint. So that peach color plus a touch of white paint. And this is definitely a step where less is more. You don't need a lot of paint on your brush to accomplish this, this realistic look to it. I like to use a very little bit of paint and just kind of build the highlighted area. And if you've used too much paint and it's, you know, it's not drying enough for you and you're having difficulty building these layers because your paint is too wet, just give it a couple minutes, let it dry for a minute, and then you can certainly come back and add those layers as you see fit. There would naturally be kind of a shadow behind her knee, so I'm just kind of adding this little bit of a highlight down in through here. I might have to do something with her foot. I think that her shoe is not out far enough. Hold on, let me tweak this as I'm talking here, because yeah, that looks a little bit better. It didn't look right to me. She might need a wider ankle too, but we'll figure that out. So I'm just adding the highlight, just going to continue to add a little bit of highlight on here with my white and my peach color. So this is just going to bring this down in through here. There would be a little bit on the front of her foot, and then of course it's going to get a little bit darker as it goes towards the exterior or the sides of it. So I'm concentrating on having that highlight down the area that's popping out the most, maybe a little bit on her knee, a little bit more on her thigh, coming in through here, and you just build it until it's as bright as you want it to be. And of course, when we get to the little final details on our flowers, you can on the petals, you can certainly adjust those as you see fit. I'm thinking this back leg might need a little more volume to it too, or this leg in through here. So this is the beautiful part about this too. You can certainly continue to tweak the shape of it as much as you need to. There we go. A little bit thicker calf muscle in through there. And then I'm just going to add the hint of it on that back leg. So just a little bit of this highlight on the back leg just to kind of get it to pop out a little bit more, but making sure that it still kind of stays in those shadows. And you don't need to do much because these legs are, you know, the majority of them is going to be in the shadow. So you just kind of keep adding those highlights to the areas that you feel are going to be popping out the most. So if your thigh is going to be popping out the most, that's the part that you want to be the lightest. If you want those feet to really look like they're underneath, then those are going to be the darkest. And you can always add a little bit of brown and or black back to the equation in order to make sure that you have it dark enough where you need to. So I'm going to put some more darkness behind her knee in a second, back in through here, so you can get that dimensional element behind the leg as well. So just making sure that I've got this as blended as I want. So I'm going to dip my brush in a little bit of black and brown to give her that shadow behind her knee in through here. And then of course I would just keep tweaking it with my skin color to make sure that it blends in well, but it's got that shadow behind it, so it really looks like it is, you know, got that element to it, that dimensional element to it. And if I make it too far, you just keep tweaking until you've got it the way that you want. I think I want a little bit more white as it's coming around here. Yeah, there we go. This part's gonna pop out nice for me. And again, you can see I just kind of keep adding these little bits of color to get this calf to pop out, because to me, that'd be the part that is dancing the most. So you can certainly keep fiddling with yours. I might fiddle with my shoes a little bit more, but you can get yours to be as elevated as you want. And then we are going to be utilizing this same brush for the next step. So once you've got your leg all popping out as much as you want them to, you can wash and dry this small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're gonna do for the next step is we're finishing her head. So I'm gonna use my small brush, and I'm gonna be using brown, black, white. Oh, again, I'm using all my colors. So we're gonna start with the skin color that we used. So that was that peachy color. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna designate her shoulders and her chest area and a little bit on her face. So again, I'm just kind of doing a little layer of this peachy color, which again is being accentuated by the dark brown underneath, providing us with a really pretty base for the skin when we add the highlights and the shadows. So I'm not going to be doing much to her face. We're going to be strategically hiding it with a whole bunch of hair. So when I get to there, I'm really just going to be adding a little silhouette of sorts for her ear and her chin and her neck, I guess. So again, don't forget your little pieces of arms in through here. So again, I'm just adding a little bit of that peachy color on top. So for the neck of sorts, I'm just going to kind of bring a line down on this side in through here. I'm going to give the side of her face in through here. So really just kind of giving a curved line, and then maybe just a little hint of an ear up in through here. And then what I'm going to do, I'm not going to wash my brush, I'm just picking up a touch of black paint. I'm going to add some shadows. If I can get a little black paint on my brush, there we go. I'm going to put a little shadow underneath her chin, something like this. And again, less is more, so once you get it on there, you can just kind of rub it in, something like that. I'm going to add a tiny bit underneath her ear, maybe inside of her ear, just to get this illusion of the side of her face in through there. And then the rest is going to be hair. So while the skin is kind of drying, in order for us to put the little pops of highlights on it, I'm going to go ahead and do my hair. So the hair can really be any color that you want. I think actually I'm going to put a little bit of shadow coming out from underneath her hair. So if this is going to be her face, I just put a little bit of black and the skin color on, just to kind of get a little bit of a shadow that's going to come out from under the hair like this. There we go. So the hair can really be whatever color you want it to be. I'm going to start with kind of a black and brown base so I can get it in place. I want it to look like it's moving and it's being flipped here and there. So I just want to kind of give myself, in essence, kind of a little roadmap to start. So I want her hair to kind of come from the top of her head and kind of fall or be flung across her face somewhere in through here. So I'm just going to kind of do this, and it's going to come cascade over her shoulder like that. So really, again, just black and brown is where I'm starting. I'm also going to have it kind of coming down and covering this right side of her body, just so it provides us with a great disguising element. And then I'm going to also have some coming on the opposite side of her arm. So I want to kind of go from this right side, just bring it down to her arm in through here, and then have some coming out on the bottom side of her arm over in through here. So I'm just kind of using, again, the black and the brown to provide these kind of wavy type of pieces of hair that are just being kind of flung about as she's dancing and moving. I'm going to bring this right up to what would be her hand, and it can even kind of hide her hand a little bit if you want. You can have some coming out on the other side. You can have wavy hair, you can have straight hair, whatever you'd like. I'm just having mine with a lot of movement. I'm going to have some maybe coming in front of her ear and just kind of cascading down the front side of her body in through here, and maybe just kind of resting between her flower dress. Maybe that's just going to kind of be moving around over here, and I've got to have some kind of just almost like being flung around the other side of her head. So I'm not going to do too much on this side. I might make it look a little bit more out of focus on that left hand side. So then I'm just going to wash and dry my brush while the hair is just kind of drying here. I'm going to finish up on her skin. So I'm going to use that peach color plus a little bit of white to add some bits of highlights. So I definitely want a little highlight on this shoulder in through here. So very little bit of paint on my brush. I'm going to pick up some more of that peachy color just to get this little highlight to blend in. And if yours is too yellow or too pink, or just of a hue that you don't want it to be, you can certainly just kind of adjust it as you see fit for whatever skin tone that you would like. And then once I've got that little highlight, and I just kind of working with it a little bit here, once I've got that on there, then I can put a tiny bit on the hand that is poking out. And maybe your hand, didn't make that much of a appearance. And if it did, great. Just put a little bit of a highlight on it in through there with a skin tone plus a little bit of white. And you can, oops, got a little bit too much paint on my brush there. And you can just kind of keep adjusting it as you see fit. You could also, on this hand, you could put a little tiny a shadow underneath it. So I just picked up a tiny bit of black paint, and I'm putting a little shadow on the underside of her wrist, as well as on the little petal that she is holding. So that's a cute little effect that you could certainly add to it if you wanted to. And if you needed to switch brushes and have a smaller brush, feel free to do so, but I'm going to just kind of work with this one. There you go. And then maybe a little bit more of a highlight, maybe on her thumb in through here. So just a little bit more white on my brush, adding a bit more on the top side of her hand as well. And then I think I want a little brighter highlight on her shoulder, so I just added a bit more white to the equation here. So this is gonna give her a lot of light on that one shoulder that's just kind of peeking out from behind her, behind the dress. And then any little highlights that I want, of course, on that other arm or on her face or on her ear. So maybe there's just a little highlight on the edge of her ear or on the edge of her jaw. That will give you that appearance of it actually really being the skin that's poking out in through there, maybe a little bit on her arm in through here, maybe a little bit on her forearm in through here. And again, this will be your decision how bright you want the skin to appear, how light you want it, how much in the focal point you want it, or if you want it to just kind of fade off into the distance and not be as much of a focal point as the dress. So that's certainly a decision that you can make on your own. And I think I just want to kind of add a little bit to this arm in through here. There we go. Get that a little bit brighter right in through that area. And then for her hair, I'm gonna have just, you know, lighter streaks. Oh, I think I need to do a little bit more in through here. Yeah, just get that to pop out a little bit more. There we go. So I'm just gonna use my brown and maybe a little yellow and white. You can make it just a lighter version of brown if you want to, and that's going to give you the illusion of a couple of the pieces just kind of being illuminated by the spotlight. I'm not going overboard with it. I just want you, again, the viewer, to feel the movement of it, to that it's just cascading and just, you know, being thrown around as she is enjoying whatever kind of dance that she is enjoying. I'm getting this left side to have a little bit more lightness to it. And of course, you could have yours curly, you could have yours, you know, fading into the background, whatever works for you. I think I want some more pieces, maybe just kind of being tossed about behind her arm here, maybe a couple going, oh yeah, going over her hand a little bit. And just, you know, make it move, make the hair move, make her move, whatever. Yeah, that's looking good. And then you just do any little tweaks that you want to finish up the hand and the head and the hair. And then we are going to be utilizing our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can put this small brush away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're gonna do for the next step is we're finishing the petals on our dress. So I'm using my medium brush. You might find when you get up towards those smaller ones that you wanna utilize your small brush, but I might just muscle through with the medium brush the whole time. So I'm gonna work from the bottom and work my way up. This is where I'm gonna attempt to get the majority of my chalk marks to disappear, but after I'm done, if I find that I still have a little more chalk marks later, then I'll just erase them with water. But I am going to be utilizing a lighter version of all of these colors on the edges of these petals. So these petals can kind of almost cup in an outward motion, like the two edges to this one petal can both stick out. And of course they're rounded, they kind of droop down a little bit down here, but up here they kind of go up. So it would make sense if you had both sides of the petals highlighted. Except for these ones underneath here. These we just kind of want to do a little bit of a highlight just so you can separate them out a little bit and so they don't look like just one mass of petals. So I'm going to be much more liberal with my paint as I go to apply it. So I may be using a lot of paint at any time and my brush might go kind of fast as I go through this step because I know I like to just kind of add it on and blend it in and move on to the next one when I get to these final steps because it makes it look more natural to me. So how I'm going to be doing this, I'll start from my dark area and work my way to the light. I'm going to attempt to get the edges of the petals a little bit lighter and all the while maintaining that shadowy area underneath. I might end up doing 2 quick layers as I'm going through this process. The only trouble spots are going to kind of be where I have my feet in through here, but I'll just go a little bit slower as I'm doing that. And then as I get up in this vicinity in through here, I'm going to want to make sure that I pull up any of these petals to make it look like they are on the exterior. Right now it looks like I painted around them, so I'll want to pull them up and make sure that they're covering her skin a little bit, but I'll talk it through as I go through the process. So underneath here, I know that I used that dark magenta color, so I'm going to use that, and I think my highlight color is just going to be magenta. So this is going to be a, a pretty fluid type of step where I'm just kind of adding the paint, making sure I kind of get all the way to those tippy ends. I'm concentrating on just having it more towards the edges, but making sure that it blends in with the neighboring colors. So like something like this, if I've got that lighter color on my brush, I'm going to bring it all the way to the edge of that petal, but make sure that it blends in with the neighboring area. I'm going to stay down in this region with that dark magenta and the regular magenta on my brush to make sure that I've got all of these little areas down by the feet taken care of. And as you get into the area next to the legs, if you felt that you wanted to add any more shadow or anything else to this area, now's the time to do it. You can take out your small brush if you wanted to, and get maybe even have a petal on top of her leg or anything along that line. You can certainly go through that process of making sure that is all nice and taken care of. And now I'm just going to kind of work my way towards these lighter areas. So again, I'm using my dark magenta, but now maybe I'll utilize my regular magenta plus a little bit of white as I'm transitioning up in through this area. So I will, a lot of the time during a step like this, have multiple colors on my brush at the same time, and I have a lot of paint on my brush. So that way I do get these nice fluid type of brush strokes, and I'm able to kind of utilize that moisture of the paint to get it to blend in with neighboring colors. So I just accomplished that by using my dark magenta, my light magenta, plus a little bit of white. So I'm going to go ahead and do that over on this one as well, getting those tips to be a little bit lighter. And then as I work my way in towards the interior of this, just making sure that it blends in nicely. And if you feel like you went too light or you need to adjust it any, you just kind of adjust it on the fly. Just pick up a little bit more white paint or a little bit more of the light magenta, get it to blend in a little bit. I'm going to the edges to make sure that I'm taking care of my my chalk mark, but I can see that I still will have a little bit of chalk to take care of after this is all done, but that's all right. And just making sure that it blends all the way up into that shadowy area. And as I'm coming into this next tier, I'm not washing my brush. I just picked up some of my magenta plus white, and I'm just making sure that I've got these lighter areas. And this is where I am definitely concentrating about my edges in through here, because I want to make sure that I cover up the exterior edge of it so it doesn't look like I've missed any spots from painting. So I will have to kind of go past maybe my outline just a little bit in order to make sure that I've brought it all the way to that tip. And I'm just going to kind of keep systematically going through this to make sure that I've got all of these edges nice and painted in. And then again, if you needed to go back into that interior, just pick up some of your dark magenta or whatever color you were using as your shadow color on the inside, just to make sure that that is still nice and kind of fading into the darkness of that particular petal. And as I'm coming over here, I just picked up some of the regular magenta plus white, and you can certainly, again, just kind of blend it into that darker area. And I'm just kind of, again, systematically going through this. I know that I want these edges to be on the lighter side, so I'm just kind of maintaining that thought process throughout. Ooh, I got a big long one in through here. So just making sure that I've hit all of them. This one, again, is on the exterior. So this one that I'm tackling here is definitely good. In my head would be lighter than this one. So just making sure that I am selling that story of it being on the lighter version and making sure that I get all the way to the tips of the petals. And if you lose some of the definition because you had too much paint on your brush, again, you can always go back and fiddle with it. And having some of these petals sitting on top, like I'm going to do something neat with this one, I will bring it in front of this one. So that, again, is going to add a little bit more information, just making sure that I don't lose that shadowy area up top. So I just picked up some of that dark magenta. So at this point right now, I'm using both shades of magenta and white to accomplish this this highlighted type of area, and to, in essence, kind of finish each petal, making sure that I go all the way to the edges, making sure that I've got some kind of highlight and some kind of shadow still represented on each particular petal. And again, if you don't cover up all of your chalk mark at this point, it's okay. You can, once it's after you get done doing your petals, you can just erase it with a little bit of water. And some of these petals, so like this one kind of sticks out, it would make sense for a bright part to be in through here. And then again, I'm just going to kind of utilize more white on my brush as I'm moving up my petals, so you will always be able to see some of that color underneath. So even though I am utilizing a good amount of white on my brush, that warmth from those layers that we did earlier will still translate because it is, acrylic paint is inherently translucent. So you will still see some of that, that lighter or that warmer tone underneath. And you can use brown in these highlights. You don't just have to use the magenta. Like right now, I just picked up some magenta white and a touch of brown as I'm going towards these lighter ones. So it takes on more of a light, more of an airier kind of feel as it's going up those petals. I'm going to probably start going a little bit faster as I'm getting towards these top ones, because I have a good amount of paint on my brush right now, and I can kind of get it to travel pretty far. And when I'm feeling the fluidity of it, and my head is on straight as I'm going through these, I can really kind of fly, making sure that I've got that that shadowy area, and I kind of can tackle a couple of petals at the same time. But again, I really want to make sure that I still have the edges of those petals that are evident, and that they're getting lighter and lighter as they come up the dress. So I'm just kind of enhancing these little highlights a little bit. I'm feeling like I want those just a little bit lighter. So you can certainly, as the paint dries, it will take on sometimes a little bit different of a hue. So if if it turns a little bit darker than you want it to, you can always just go back in and kind of pop on that extra little bit of brightness as you feel is necessary. And I'm just going to keep working my way up towards these lighter ones. And as I get towards these lighter ones, I'm using quite a bit of white on my brush, very little of anything else, but my brush is dirty. So I have not washed my brush, which allows me to utilize the colors that are sitting within my bristles. So that is a great way to just keep that color transitioning from one area to the other without having to do much. I want it to go lighter, but I don't necessarily want to I want it to transition naturally. I just put a bit of brown on my brush just to make sure that I've got these shadows are working well enough, because I feel like I want to get this light going, but I want to make sure I still have some shadows under there. So I just wiped my brush off, picking up some more white with a, whoops, that was a little bit too much magenta on my brush. And then I'm just going to kind of, as I'm getting towards these interior ones, I'm just kind of flicking my brush to get the tips of them going. Again, they're shorter. I'm kind of following my shadow pattern that I put on there a little while ago, making sure that I've got this one that she's holding on to. And this is where I might slow down a little bit as I'm doing these smaller ones, just so I don't make them look too chaotic. I know that I want them to go in a certain direction, but I do know that there needs to be some chaos to them, but I don't want my brush to get carried away, which it has a tendency to do. So I've got to sometimes slow down and actually give a conscious thought to make sure that my brush does what I want it to and not what it wants to do. So I'm just kind of slowing down a little bit, using much more white on my brush as I get towards these little ones that I want to cross over into her skin a little bit, to make sure it still takes on the little petal look and has some good dimensional elements to it. So just slowing down, getting these little bits in here and maintaining some of that shadowy area in between so it looks three-dimensional. And then as I'm getting towards these last couple ones in through here, just, sometimes they can get a little confusing from one to the next. So you just want to make sure that you're not confused, because if you're confused, that means the viewer is going to be confused. So I'm just going to kind of make sure that I've got all of these talking to each other. Maybe this one needs to come over just a little bit more with the brightness in through here. And same thing over here. And then I would just kind of keep fiddling with them. So I would just, maybe step back from it a little bit and wait for it to dry. Because I know that for me, again, the paint takes on a different effect as it's drying. So I would get all my petals on here. I would step back from it for let it dry for a few minutes. And then if I felt like I wanted to bump up those highlights add, some more warmth to it or some more detail to it, I would definitely go ahead and do that. And then we have one tiny little step left to go. So once you've got all of your beautiful, see? As I'm saying this, I'm like, oh, I want some more highlight here and I want some more highlight there. But once you've got all of your beautiful petals on here, you're gonna, you can put this, I'm never gonna be able to stop. I know I'm not. I can't even finish my sentence right now. I'm so excited about these petals. Once you've got your petals all done, if you can ever stop, we're gonna utilize our small brush for the next step. So just keep painting as long as you want and then get your small brush out and ready for the next step. All right, so we are on to the final step. This is the final step of every painting, which is to sign it. So I usually sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right. I'm going to use my small brush. I am signing mine with black paint, but of course you could use whatever color you want. I think I'm going to sign this in the bottom left. I'm going to sign mine with my initials, but you could certainly sign yours with your first name or the date or a symbol or whatever you would like to sign it with. It's totally up to you. It's your painting. You sign it however you would like to. And that is going to conclude this painting. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you painted yourself a beautiful dancing lady, and I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.